a talented individual in our business who's a mother for the second time. We want her skills. We want to retain her knowledge in the business. She's a shining star for the future. Why wouldn't we make the effort to make it work for her?
Welcome to The Fearless Foodie, the podcast that gets honest about what it really takes to thrive in food and retail. I'm Amy Wilkinson, coach, speaker and trusted partner to food industry teams with lived experience of the pace, pressure and politics that come with the job. Fearless Foodies cut through the fluff and get straight to what actually helps. And that's exactly what we're here to do. Let's dive in.
So today, the topic of the podcast, which is being recorded and will go out. So, anybody that asks questions, that's going to go out on the podcast feed. I don't know if that's going to make you more likely to ask questions or less. But we're here to talk about why supporting women in the food industry is a way of building a stronger business. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Tracy Southwell from March Foods and Ross Dennison. Both of them agreed to come and talk about this because when we talked about it, we were talking about how important human skills are in the food industry. And I was sitting through talks yesterday, talking about AI, looking at Ryan there, he was part of that panel. And I think in the age of AI, humans are going to become more and more important. And that's what's going to differentiate us a lot of the time. But today, we're talking about women in leadership. And what I was worried about, I'm already there's less people here than when we were talking about some food, but that's fine, I'm over it. But also the fact that a lot of the time when we're going to talk about gender, we're going to talk about, something that is in the ether of DE&I, there can be a little bit of oh God, they're going to give us a lecture. They're going to give us a load of statistics. Have you got any statistics? Yes. Okay. There's going to be a couple of statistics, but that isn't what this is about. It's really about having a real conversation about why this matters and some real tips about what you can do within your own businesses to help elevate women and why that matters. So welcome to Tracy and Ross.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
So Tracy, tell everybody a bit about yourself, but also why this matters to you. Why was this a topic you were like, yeah, I'm going to go and talk about?
Thank you, Amy. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Southwell. I'm the Managing Director of March Foods. We're a co-packer and co-manufacturer based in March in Cambridgeshire. I've been with the business for 7 months. And if I can just have a big shout out from my amazing, delightful food group posse that are in the house. They're making up around 30% of the audience today. So thank you very much, guys. Love you.
So why did you want to come and talk about, why do you think it matters that we have this conversation?
Yeah, it absolutely does matter. When you look at manufacturing as a whole, we know that there is a kind of retirement wave about to happen in the next 10 years. A huge swathe of people will leave manufacturing, and that offers us an opportunity to attract new talent. But the risk here is that we aren't setting up our organisation to welcome that talent in the right way, to nurture it and to retain it in the long term. So understanding how gender issues can impact in the food manufacturing environment are really the hot topic for us to talk about today.
Yeah. And Ross, come on then, tell us about you and why, well, apart from that, I phoned you and said, will you come and do this panel with me? Why does this matter to you?
So I'm Ross Dennison. I've spent good chunk of 20 years in FMCG in a number of roles, commercial, technical, GM, supplying our lovely retailers. Got a lovely bit of feedback. No, he's shaking his head. Okay, look, this is really personal for me. It's something I'm really passionate about. I grew up effectively in a single parent household, which definitely shaped my values around fairness and resilience. And I've got a 12-year-old and 13-year-old daughters. So this is something incredibly personal to me about fairness, equality, opportunity, respect, and transparency as they go into their careers. So when Amy rang, not straight away, but I did say yes.
He said yes eventually, but I think it's quite a good point because you were a little bit nervous about being a man on a panel talking about women in leadership. Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, I say yes to everything, or let's put it a different way. I find it very difficult to say no. But when Amy asked me, I did hesitate, not because I don't want to do this, but I don't want to come across in the wrong way. I sat in your seats a few years ago at a similar event to this, and there was a gentleman on stage representing a big blue chip business as a senior executive talking about equality, gender, but it just came across as sound bites, and it came across to me really inauthentic, and I cringed a bit, and I won't forget that. And I am sure he was well-meaning, and I'm sure he had the best intentions, but to me it came across as slightly condescending and patronizing. So when Amy asked me, my immediate thought was, I just don't want to be that man. I actually said it in a bit of a different way to Amy, which I won't repeat now, but I don't want to come across in the wrong way. And therefore today for me is not really going to be about theory or corporate sound bites. It's going to be hopefully a bit more practical and pragmatic.
Yeah. And I think that's partly what happens, isn't it? Right. So people are worried about saying the wrong thing, so they don't say anything at all. And then the conversations don't happen. And that's, you know, why we have the podcast, so that we can talk about things that sometimes feel a little bit awkward to talk about, but actually they need to be talked about. So Tracy, give us some stats then. Why? I know she's got them all stored up in her head, you see, right?
Yeah. So I guess one of the things we talked about today in preparation for the podcast was, you know, to think about this key item around people retiring from manufacturing, and majority of those people being men. And therefore, as we attract new talent into food manufacturing or manufacturing in general, and there's a great report from the Institute for Manufacturing, if you want to find it online, all of the stats, if you want to verify them, are available. So I run a food manufacturing business in Cambridgeshire. From a statistical perspective, we're really lucky. We have an even gender split between male and female. And, you know, for us, understanding how to create a great environment for women to thrive at all levels is super important. So whether you are working in the factory on one of our packing lines, you know, access to, you know, water or to have a break if you're having a hot flush with the menopause is really important. And acknowledging those simple things can make such a huge difference in the environment that you provide for the people that you employ. So my mission is to talk about 4 M's today. So maternity, menopause, miscarriage, and any other takers for anybody? If you want some stats, 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in miscarriage. 99% of women believe that menopause impacts on their ability to do their job. Okay, 800 million women globally at some point, one day a month, will be having a period. And this is something that we discussed in the preparation for the meeting. And I was going, right, boss, you need to get really comfortable with saying periods. You know, if you can't say periods, and how are you ever going to create an environment where your women can feel comfortable? So maybe practice it. If you're a guy in the room, stand in front of the mirror, practice saying it. Or maybe have that conversation with your wife and just get comfortable with being uncomfortable talking about the 4 M's, because you'll find that often you don't need to have big swathing strategies around your people. You just need to be able to be human. And I think that's where AI will struggle a little bit, is, you know, acknowledging that somebody might be struggling with period pains because you see them walking through the office clenching their tummy. So I think those are the things that really I'd like to talk about today. It makes Blossom very uncomfortable.
Thank you. Let's talk about periods, Ross.
I've got 12-year-old and 30-year-old daughters, so it's quite topical.
So, but this is the thing, and I think anybody that's in the audience as well, and anybody listening at home, I think it is one of those things, isn't it? Like, parents of girls and boys need to start talking about things like periods being a more normal thing to talk about. Because even my other half is early 50s, and, you know, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. We're not quite there yet, but when I say the word, he's still a bit like, ooh, you know, like little boy in the playground. And I'm like, you can't be like that. You can't be like that. We need to create it to be more normalised, really. So, Tracy, I know you've done some things at March to help, not just around periods, but to help women. But I think that, and we'll come on to this and we'll talk to you a bit about it, Ross, because it isn't just about creating a culture that is better for women. It's just about creating a culture that's better for everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us about some of the things.
So I have to just caveat, I've only been at March Foods for 7 months. So what I've been able to achieve in a short space of time, and there's still more to do, but we have embraced a wellness room. which enables us to have conversations with people in a much nicer way instead of sitting in a formal office across a desk. We're able to support people who may be struggling with mental health concerns, and especially younger generations that are coming into the workplace. That's definitely a hot topic for them. I very much see it as a duty of care that we want to try and keep people who are in a crisis or are struggling perhaps on site rather than walking off site, mainly because you don't know what's going to happen to them. But equally, you'd love to get them back to work, because I am running a business alongside my colleagues, and we are here to make a success of that. But at the same time, I think our human approach to that, and signposting to people and involving people in what we're trying to do to create a great environment where if you need to take a moment to reset, if you're going through a hot flush, for example, leave the line, go and, we cross-train people very successfully so people can jump onto different jobs. It doesn't matter who you are. I have run very badly, so my packers told me, but I have run one of our packing lines. So I think, being able to say to people, it's okay, go and take 5 minutes. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So elements of it is just being a bit more human. But like you say, it's not, because I think that's one of the points that we wanted to get across, is we're not just saying this because it's about helping more women. It's not just a wellbeing initiative. This is about creating an environment that is commercially viable as well, like actually keeping women in work, or keeping people that are struggling in work by providing some support in those.
You're absolutely right. And a final statistic, but 42% of women do seek to perhaps leave work when they're in, I'm going to focus on menopause because that's my age bracket. And that's such a shame. You're losing skillful workers. You want to retain those talented people in your business, and therefore sometimes the simplest things can make the biggest difference.
I think it's really interesting, Tracy. You go into quite practical examples there and very specific. To me, this is like a bigger picture around, we talk about systems and we talk about environment. And I think, to me, it comes down to business culture, and it comes down to values. And, the culture of a business has to be driven from the top. It has to be lived from the bottom up as well. But if your leadership team aren't a living example of what culture they want in the business, then you're going to fail straight away. And I think values, all businesses in the room are going to have some sort of value around respect or trust or care. But is that lived? Is that breathed? And is that natural? And if it's not, it should really stand out. If that's a value of the business and it's not happening every day. And I think part of where I come from in this discussion is not so much about women, it's just in general. How do you facilitate an environment which celebrates diversity? How do you bring that collective together? Because whether it's cognitive diversity, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's anything, age, is the experience that brings and the approach that brings and the different thinking and the challenge, I think is absolutely immense.
Yeah.
My watch out is it's really easy to recruit your own image or the image of your own business. Yeah. And I think the challenge therefore is to push yourself to actually what you need to bring into a team. We were just talking about what you've done in the last 6 months, and I bet you brought different people into the business who were in there before.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's diversity isn't just about ticking a box. It's about actually diversity of thought and supporting that diversity. I'm rubbish at stats, right? So I never know the stats, which is why I've been like, Tracy, what's the stats? But I know there are statistics around how much more innovation you get in businesses that have got diversity. The outcomes are much better because everybody's not just looking down a tunnel vision and thinking the same way. So it is about
absolutely right. And there's so many studies that demonstrate that great organizations that embrace great DE&I strategies and bring great people in, great talent, and create environments where everybody can be successful, normally outperform. So, yeah.
And Ross, we brought you on as a male ally. It's like, I'm just constantly trying to make him cringe. But I know at your time at Bakkavor, there was a women's program, wasn't there? So talk to us about how men can help women at work.
Yeah, again, I think this is really straightforward. And I struggle by everyone doesn't do this, to be honest. At Bakkavor, we had a really good female mentoring program, which I was part of. And then I was asked to do a similar panel to this, where I didn't tell Amy this. I got absolutely grilled by the chair. They went off piece and really tested me in a nice way because, oh, Ross, you'll come across more authentic if I challenge you. Oh, great. Thanks for that. But it's really important to me. And this idea of allyship versus sponsorship, and allyship to me is this day to day. What do you do to make sure you are supportive of females, to make sure you are the advocate of females in a business. And again, I take this back to me. It just feels like you're being fair to everyone in the room, whether they're male, female, introvert, extrovert. But there's a real sensitivity to quite a male-dominated environment. And when things are said or the behaviour isn't appropriate, I think you need to jump on it quickly. And whether that's around calling it out or calling it in, if you need to have a go and have a chat, but you've got to be quick. And I think you've got to be consistent. I think the difference to sponsoring is where you really use your position and your influence to drive and support and create opportunities for people in your team. And you are the voice of that person when they're not in the room. How do you create opportunities? And it's an interesting one that I find quite interesting about the debate around confidence at the moment with females, and whether it is females or whether it's a system that creates that. Yeah. But I think there is my experience to push and push and push, probably disproportionately to how I would push men in the team, to be honest, because I just know that potential is there and there's opportunities for it.
Yeah. And there's just, if I can just build on that, if you wouldn't mind, this kind of question around women's credibility and authority is real. And I think to answer your question, it's a bit of both. Fake it till you become it. Don't let anybody else tell you. My response to you guys was, I'm going to quote some stats. If you want to fact check them, knock yourself out. Okay. They could be right. They could be wrong, but I'm going to blag it anyway. So I think, you have to own that confidence level. Yeah. Absolutely. And at the same time, challenge the system that you're in if it is undermining your credibility and authority. Now, I can see my group CEO, who is a massive advocate for equality and runs our businesses collectively with us around our values. They are front and centre at everything we do, but that is not always the case. And I have worked in organisations where, as I'm sure many of us have, where values are words on a wall that nobody pays any attention to, and actually the culture doesn't necessarily represent those values. Yeah. So coming back to Ross's point around authenticity, that's super, super important. But yeah, confidence, definitely, that's a big takeaway for everybody in the room, especially women. Don't allow people to question your credibility and authority.
There's a couple of things that come to mind when you're saying that. One is shout out to Ricky, who is the CEO. He does publicly talk about the balance that he has in his life in terms of it's not all about work, and steps up, as a father in all of that. Because I feel like a lot of the time we talk about what can we do for women, making it more flexible, all of these things. Actually, what can we do for men that will help them to be able to be equal? Because I think there's so much out there, like you only get 2 weeks off for paternity leave, and is it more frowned upon if a man says that they've got to leave for the school show or to do pickup? And I know, Ross, you used to do the same, like, I'm going to leave now to pick the children up from school. I think that's another thing that men can do, is be braver to say that themselves, so that it becomes more, it's not just a gender thing. It's not just the mum's going to do it. Because I know with my partner, he's not in that business anymore, but he used to have conversations where they were saying to him, when he said, I need to leave like 5 minutes early to go and pick up my daughter from nursery. Well, you've got a wife. Why can't she do it? And it's like, well, she runs a business. She does this. And why should she do it? I definitely think it's harder for women, but I think it's hard for men as well to be able to show those softer sides, to be able to do those things. And the more socially acceptable that becomes, that's how we get more.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I've got a lovely story to share. In my previous role, it was on a Teams call with a colleague, and he said to me, Tracy, I just want to share something with you. And it was basically his twin daughters, his wife, and she was singing, the kids were playing the piano, and it was a really beautiful family moment. And he shared it with me, and it was clearly a very talented family, but it was just lovely. And I remember at the end of the call, I said to him, would you have shared that with the previous MD? He went, absolutely not. And I thought, God, what a shame. Yeah, that's such a lovely, warm moment that we've shared together. He's been brave enough to, be vulnerable, share some intimate family things with me. And I was able to really respect and celebrate and enjoy that as well. So I think, coming back to your AI point, those moments are going to be lost if you don't lean into them.
Yeah.
I think it does feel, though, that we're in a period of transition. What was the norm? What should be the norm? The previous MD to yourself, imagine you're very different, Tracy, by the sounds.
Very different, yeah.
And how you come across as authentic and allow that and give permission to the people in your team to do that. Going back to Amy's point, I would make a point. I'm fiercely protective about spending time with my daughters. They are young. They're going to get to a point they're going to be less dependent on me. If I'm going to leave at 4, I'm going to leave at 4. And showing that to the business actually isn't totally in line with the values of the business. You know, it's still a bit presenteeism. But if I do that for myself, I give permission for the team to do that as well. And I'm trusting them to do the output. It's not about the input. And that, I think, is quite different. Years ago, would I have shown my boss my school sports day of my kids? Probably not.
No.
You know, absolutely not. Now I've got pictures up around the office of everyone's kids.
That's the benefit of having women in your organisation. You know, they can help shape and change your culture. They can make it easier for men to participate more actively in that side of things who perhaps haven't been able to do so previously. I think we were at a Chamber of Commerce event a couple of weeks ago, weren't we? And they had this fascinating moment where the speaker asked the question of all of the women in the room, you know, how often do you get things wrong? And in a nanosecond, every woman in the room put their hand up. And we asked the question, if this was a room of men or, you know, men and women, would they do the same? Would they be, all right, I just need to check if the guy over there, is he going to put his hand up first before I do? So I think women talk about things more than men. It probably drives the men nuts, but I think it's important. And our freedom of expression, I think actually we should celebrate. And I think it benefits the workplace full stop, but also enables men to kind of get on board with it.
Yeah. Talk more.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Engage more. Yeah.
And I think there's really something in having, I mean, it's a massive passion of mine, and what I do in other parts of my business is I feel like the more women we can get in leadership, and they talk about the broken rung, you know, they get to a point and then it stops, and it's like between 30 and 50 that a lot of women leave the industry. That if we want that change to happen for everybody in the industry, we need more women at the top to be able to create more of that balance and to make it more acceptable for men to, you know, show their softer side. But it isn't soft, right? It's just human.
Yeah.
And like, I know yesterday I spoke to loads of men where they were saying, oh, I love how you talk about like real life and the crap things that happen and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's a confidence thing that I feel like I can be authentic. I hate the word authentic, but you know, actually if that starts to give more and more people permission to do that, it doesn't have to just be women that do that, but it helps everybody if everybody can just be a bit more honest at work, right, about what's going on in their life. Because a lot of times, and I know, you know, some of the businesses that I've worked in that, you know, I don't want to use the word toxic, but that have been very, very harsh environments, a lot of the time it was you didn't talk about your life outside of work, and people would make assumptions about people's performance, not knowing what else was going on. If you give permission to people to be able to speak about that stuff, you could just make a tiny little adjustment for those people, you know, that makes a massive difference. Now, one thing that I am thinking about and that people here might be thinking about is this is all well and good, but in a manufacturing environment where you can't just go, yeah, you can just leave before the end of the shift. What sorts of things can you do that aren't, you know, just...
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a true statement. It is challenging. You know, you've got quotas to hit, products to get out the door on time. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It can be challenging. I think being present, you know, as a senior management team, which, by the way, is predominantly women, very proud of that fact. So we're present with our teams. We, you know, hopefully we've done our employee engagement survey. We've just closed that on Friday. So I'm about to find out in the next couple of weeks what everybody actually really does feel. But yeah, I think, you know, that human touch, understanding. So if I do my factory walk and go and speak to my team, I'm pretty confident of people's names, even if they haven't got a name badge on. You know, I've got to know them. I'm starting to learn about their life. And, you know, there are things that you can do that help them and support them and get their, you know, their buy-in and commitment that is over and above perhaps what other manufacturers do. It's difficult to pinpoint things, but it's the human touch.
Yeah.
It's remembering that this person has a disabled child, or this person might be going through, you know, a marriage breakdown, or this person has to walk 10 miles to work, whatever it might be. But it's remembering those things and remembering those people are struggling with things in their life. And when you acknowledge and recognize that, again, human touch, you know, you get that buy-in and commitment from people.
Yeah.
As I say, practically, I'm a very pragmatic person. So, you know, we're able to run lines if people decide that they are having a moment, or they're having a, you know, a mental health concern right in the middle of, you know, production. We can take them off the line and support them. And sometimes it's just those simple things.
Yeah. And I think it's the simple things, but it's also making those things visible, isn't it?
100%.
So that people know that they are in an environment in which they can say what's going on or what they need.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I think whether it's a manufacturing environment or an office environment, I think understanding your team or the business is absolutely crucial. And if you do any sort of engagement surveys, how do you follow it up? You've got to have the "you said, we did," and the comments that come out on those engagement surveys are absolutely gold dust. And how you dig into those and understand them. I think the challenge I would put back to anyone, I'm naturally quite disruptive and curious, is just keep asking why. How can you be more flexible? When it's, we can't because of this. It's like, why not? Why not? Depending on the size of the team, the shifts you've got, the output, the man hours, the people on the line, what can you do to accommodate, to give more flexibility? I
was just going to say, Ross, my little coach edge on that is we never ask the question why, because people get defensive when you say why. But if you say, okay, I understand we can't do that, but what can we do? Like, so delving in so that people are like, actually, let's think about this differently.
It's a really important point. I think my intention is I don't stop at the first. That rather than
and it's that digging deep, because I'm also thinking about what you were saying about employee engagement surveys. A lot of the time, it's actually getting beneath what is being said.
I asked one of our warehouse guys, completely anonymous, but if you haven't done the survey yet, today is the closing day. And he went, no, I'm really happy here. I don't want to do the survey. Oh, I'm like, okay, you really need survey just to say how miserable you are. You can do the survey to say that you actually really enjoy working here as well. And you can celebrate why you enjoy working here. So again, communication.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the things that, some of the practical things that you can do, you've talked about the stuff in the factory, but I think there's other things, isn't there, like outside of the factory, like job shares, stuff like that, that are just make it easier for women or people. It isn't, because we talk about women because a lot of the time they have caring responsibilities, whether that's children or aging parents. That tends to be the thing, but that isn't exclusive to women. But, people that are needing more flexible working.
Yes, I mean, flexibility. We want to give a shout out actually for Joy Burnfoot in her book, Don't Fix Women. And if you've never read it, you should read it, because it has a lot of really practical hints and tips. You can fact check my data from today because all the stats are in there. But flexibility comes through as a key theme. And one of the things that March Foods is exploring as part of our people plan is to understand whether we could review shifts, whether we could do a 4-hour shift and a handover. So people that are struggling to get back to work or can't work an 8-hour shift, for example, could we devise a shift pattern or at least pilot something to see whether or not we can be successful with flexible working arrangements for our factory colleagues? That's something that we're sort of committing to looking at and piloting. And we believe that might be a really important way to encourage great people to come and work for us by giving us that flexibility. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, because you're in quite a remote location as well, aren't you? So I imagine, because this is also part of the conversation, right? We talk about all the time in the food industry that we're struggling to attract talent, particularly in the Fens, which is where March Foods is. And it's just thinking about these different ways about how we get the right people in the right jobs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think that comes back to just gender, does it? That comes back to diversity, 100%. Flexibility, creating that environment and that system that actually promotes that and then allows people to thrive within it rather than just shutting it down is really important. But it is continuous. It's not like we do it this month and then we stop.
And I think that's where we need the change, and this is where I've got that passion, where I feel like we're in a place where we talk about struggling to attract people into the industry in the first place, then we get them in, we don't necessarily retain them, and that's because of the environment. Like, it's not particularly sexy, is it, putting wellies and hairnets on and standing in a freezing cold factory? Or, so what can we do to make it, somewhere that you want to stay? And we've been in the industry for a couple of decades each, maybe a bit more. So it is a great place to stay, but how do we make it even better and not make it as hard as it sometimes is for a lot of people? Yeah.
I think there's things we can all do on that. I think that, questioning how diverse is your team. How much can you influence that diversity? Is there people in your team that you need to support or engage with differently? And that's not about management or leadership. That's about everyone, isn't it? And then engagement surveys are the best place to raise that, if not through the escalation channels anyway. But there's certainly more we can do as individuals.
Yeah. There's almost at a system level we can do more to measure it, to ask the right questions, to make sure the structures are in place, make sure the values are not just stuck on the wall but actually lived. But then on a personal level, I'm not going to swear because I will get in trouble, but it's about just not, being a bit more human and not being what I'm trying to say without saying it, which I know Ricky used to have as one of the values.
So when my interview, my team's interview with Ricky, and the first time I met him, and I'll spell out the words, but he summed the interview up and he went, Tracy, look, it's really simple. Just don't be a DICK. I'm like, right, I can work with this guy because this makes complete sense to me. Practical, let's, be kind, be nice people. So, yeah. And we've been talking, this was one of Ross's phrases as well, don't be it.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Ricky, for that.
And I think one of the other things that we touched on, and I'm talking about it because it's up on the screen there, is also about, you were saying about that Chamber of Commerce things. Women-only spaces do help women sometimes with their confidence. And that's why this time last year, I started with a colleague of mine, Fearless Women Connect, which is a community for women specifically in the food industry. And we get together once a month and we do things on different topics. And I really battle with this because, like Joy's book, it's not about fixing women, but there are things that inherently, things like confidence, people use the word imposter syndrome, those sorts of things that we come up against. And actually next month we've got a guest speaker coming in to talk about finances, because actually a lot of women are often behind the game in planning for their pensions and stuff like that. So thinking about the things that we can do to lift other women up, but also doing it in a space where it is only women, because you can be the most confident woman ever, but it does make you more conscious. In the same way, probably a group of men don't want to look to, whatever they would call it, soft, or don't want to look silly in front of the women in a group. Yeah. Having that women-only space really helps. And I feel like it gets questioned quite a lot. And I'm like, the old boys club has existed for centuries. Just let us have an hour a month on the internet on a Zoom chat. That's not for men as well, right? Just women can be in that space.
I don't know if anybody follows rugby at all. I do. It's a big part of my life. And there's a great YouTube clip where a broadcaster is interviewing a lady called Ileana Meyer. I don't know if you know her. She plays for Bristol Bears women's team. She's from the US originally. And the interview is probably about my age. Says, so how do you feel about imposter syndrome? She went, what is that? I don't have it. And just kind of nailed it straight away. Just shut it down. It was like, I'm not even going to entertain this topic. And the broadcaster goes, oh my God, I've been suffering with the imposter syndrome for the last 20 years. It's a constant topic in my life. And this young woman just went, no, that is it. I'm not interested in it. It's not something I have, and I don't even want to discuss it. So coming back to the confidence piece and the owning it and, shaking the environment that you're in to enable you to be more confident. Just be a little bit like her, maybe. I don't know what that is.
My hope is that the next generation, so your daughters, my daughter, will come through. And it's one of those things, isn't it? It's really hard. Like, I really want my daughter to be really confident and sassy, but not when we're in Tesco's and she wants whatever she wants and we're having a fight over it. But, ultimately, I would much rather that she's like that and that she grows up saying, yeah, no, my voice matters as much as the next person's in the room. So, yeah. So we're saying it's important for women to be in leadership, but it's important to have diversity in leadership is the biggest thing. We do that by living the values, not just sticking them on the wall. We do it by saying the word periods out loud. I just said that to the men that were walking past that are part of the periods, menopause, miscarriage. We talk about these things more. That's going to help everybody. And we stop being DICKs to one another and have a more human-centered leadership style, and that's going to help everybody in the industry. Yeah? Anything else that you want people to take away from today, Ross? Sorry, putting them on the spot there.
No, the only thing is I slightly differ on this. Like, I want my daughter to be confident, but the ultimate is it's just not a thing.
Yes.
Is it? And this is the point. Yeah. The point is whether you're, or whatever you are there because of what you do and how you do it. And I think that is the ultimate to me. So as much as I'm pushing them and want these confident girls, it's the system, the business, the environment, whatever industry they go into, that just has to become the norm.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how close we are to that, but that has to be where we get to.
Yeah. I think my concern at the minute is that it feels like it's going backwards, with world events, everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we have to talk about it more and almost, go the other way.
Yeah, overcompensate.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Tracy, what about you?
Well, I think I'm probably going to refer back to Joy. I think she's gone, but it was at a conference once when I first met Joy Bamford, and her book was on the table for everybody. It was gifted to everybody at the conference. And I was the incoming managing director of a business, and the guy that had been in the business before me for 30 years as a managing director was leaving. We were in a transition period. And I just want to leave you a little story because I think it kind of sums up this experience. But anyway, so the book was on the table. It's called Don't Fix Women. So we sat down and picked it up. And Dave, if you're listening to this, I hope you're chuckling. And he put it down and he went, yeah, just leave them broken. I was like, what? I can't believe it. So yeah, I think for me, I tell that story quite a lot because I think it's important to understand that we're not broken. Okay. We just need different things.
Thank you. Right. We're going to go to questions if anybody's got any questions and wants to feature on the podcast, or we can take you out if you don't want to feature on the podcast. Go ahead. Sam's or someone here. There's just a mic coming your way. Let us know who you are as well.
Very inspiring session. I had one question. How do you think, to both of you, that women can be better supported before and after pregnancy? Because I feel women, if they lack confidence in all that, always have to compromise one way or another. Convincing them about their value, their skills, and all of that. So what would be your best advice?
I mean, I can give you a prime example. So I joined March Foods 7 months ago, and my very talented operations manager was on maternity leave. Couldn't wait for her to come back. She's an absolute star performer. And we remember she's coming from a different environment into a new environment at March Foods with me as the new managing director. So we really supported her in terms of, okay, well, I want to come back earlier. Great. What does that look like? Let's look at some adapting flexibility, some adapted hours. Then, maybe we'll phase you into, if this works for you, let you lead what works for you. We as the employer aren't going to tell you what works for you and your family. You come and speak to us and let us know what works for you. And if we can accommodate that, then we'll do it. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we do that? Talented individual in our business who's a mother for the second time. We want her skills. We want to retain her knowledge in the business. She's a shining star for the future. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we make the effort to make it work for her? Does that answer the question?
Yeah. You were just saying that it's not a one size fits all. That's the point. Yeah.
So it's about, bringing them to the conversation, show confidence or bring confidence to the table by creating a reintegration process that fits.
Yeah.
And don't even, have discussions about compromising your salary and all of that, just making sure, that they can reintegrate and that you bring that support.
Yeah. I mean, gender pay gap is a whole nother topic, which,
unfortunately,
but yeah, it's unfortunately, this is a big shout out for employers. The minute a woman goes on maternity leave, she starts to fall behind men. And I do think from an employer's perspective, we have a responsibility to make sure that women's salaries are keeping pace with men and they're not in any way disadvantaged by the fact that they're taking time away.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to answer the question and build on that. I think a good example for me is talking to the female before they go on maternity, and expectations pre and post can be quite different.
Absolutely.
Going through my first daughter being born, where I thought it was going to be easy, just keep going and everything. It's not. And I think that everyone goes into that thinking it's going to be quite straightforward. But how clear can you be before? Then it's how you keep in touch in the right way. And then it's about how flexible you are when women come back. Because, we've had instances where, it's a full-time role. So if it's not 5 days a week, then it's not going to work. Whereas I'd look at it going, well, it might be 5 days a week in 5 years' time. So how do we get back to that if that's what is needed and wanted from that individual? But look at the long-term opportunity rather than the short-term, it's 3 days rather than 5. My experience of pretty much everyone who works 3 or 4 days is they do 5 days work. I mean, and I'm the one saying stop, you need to switch off because that's what we've agreed. I think this bit around gender pay and gap, you just need to get into KPIs and objective measures there, that
100%.
you need to be really clear of where you are and what you're doing, and take that subjective side away from it. If the role is the role, the pay is the pay, and that's really easy to say, but it's abused.
It is abused. We don't have it at Marchviews. Our gender stats are good, and our gender salary split's good as well. But there are other organisations that do use it as an advantage to save money, and that should not be the case.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We are out of time, but thank you for coming.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Fearless Foodie. If it hit home, subscribe, leave a review and share it with someone who's ready for less fluff and more real talk. And if you're ready to build a bolder, braver, more brilliant team, come find me at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be fearless.